We're coming to you from the DraftKings.com podcasting studios. DraftKings.com, America's one-day fantasy sports site, where it's like a new season every time you play. DraftKings.com.
From ESPN's Pod Center, this is NBA Lockdown.
Welcome into another edition of the NBA Lockdown podcast. I'm Israel Gutierrez. Today, joining me will be Royce Young of ESPN.com to talk all things Oklahoma City. And a little bit later, we'll be joined by Kevin Arnovitz just for a little taste of the rest of the Western Conference. But it seems like OKC is in the news for all the wrong reasons lately, other than Russell Westbrook's great play. But the latest news being, of course, Kevin Durant, another foot surgery, this time bone graft in the same foot where he had the Jones fracture. I don't know how many people know the details of this. There's very little blood supply that goes to that area, so it's a difficult fracture. And as a doctor told SI.com in a story I wrote, if a fracture is named after someone, it's because it's a difficult fracture to deal with, and now Kevin Durant's been dealing with it. So we got Royce Young here to talk about that situation. Royce, how much of an expert have you become on the Jones fracture?
I have become an expert on almost all things medicine, I feel like, over this Thunder season. Because, Russell Westbrook fractured something called the zygomatic arch, which I didn't even know existed. So if you're wondering what a zygomatic arch is, I know. But, yeah, I mean, this whole Jones fracture thing and all the I've talked to a couple medical professionals myself to try to get a better handle on it. From what, I've talked to with Thunder general manager Sam Presti and the explanations he's given me about it. So, I mean, it's a ridiculous thing to try to kind of wrap your mind around. But, I mean, the fact of the matter is that Kevin Durant's had 3 surgeries in less than a year on a problematic area, which is very concerning. And, the Thunder are painting this as a picture of this is going to be something that's going to help him for his long-term health. This is a proactive move to try to ensure that he has a good, healthy career the rest of the way. But still, I mean, when you're talking about big guys and feet, I mean, everybody knows the concerns. And there's no question that you have to be a little bit skeptical with what's happening with Durant.
I think I like, is it zygomatic? Is that what you said?
Zygomatic, yeah.
I like zygomatic arch way better than Jones fracture. It sounds cooler.
I don't know if it wasn't Mr. Zygomatic, though.
No, but although that, I mean, for Russell, that kind of fits. Like, I think that should be his fashion nickname.
Yeah,
so help me wrap my mind around it then. So it's a bone graft procedure, but the healing process still is the most important part, right? It's to give it time to heal, and this just sort of helps it from what, reoccurring?
Yeah, basically. So, like, this is all kind of complicated. So, you had the screw put in October, and everything was said to be healing the way that they intended it to. The word that Sam Presti used was excellently, that it was healing that well. But he was having some pain and soreness due to the screw head of that rubbing on a different bone called the cuboid bone. So, yeah, I know what a cuboid bone is. And because of that, you saw Durant limping around. He played a little bit in the All-Star game, but then he came back and he was still limping. So what they decided to do was transition to a different screw with a different type of screw head to try to relieve some of that soreness caused by that screw. That didn't work. And, he came back. He started doing some 3-on-3 stuff. He played a little 1-on-1 in Dallas a couple of weeks ago, but the soreness was still there. And at that point, that's when they decided to take him off the floor and kind of reassess it because obviously something wasn't going right. They thought it was just a bone bruise. That's kind of the interesting thing about this. A lot of people are wondering if the Thunder were being clueless or being negligent or whatever. The reality is that they thought that they were going to have him on the floor like 2.5 weeks ago. They thought he was coming back. They thought everything was going the way it was supposed to. And once the soreness kind of persisted, then that's when they realized, hey, something else is up. This isn't just a bone bruise. And that's when it was revealed that the fracture was regressing. And that's when they decided to make the move to do the bone graft, which is supposed to, ensure that he's going to heal long term. Because the number that Presti told me was that 92 to 95% of Jones fracture patients experience full healing with the screw. Durant is in that unique 5 to 8%. And I don't know if it's because of his foot shape or what, but he's one of the people that didn't heal right, and that's when you have to go to the next step, which is the bone graft.
It's funny you should mention that. I'll get back to that in a second. So hang on to that thought about the Oklahoma City Thunder being reckless or whatever, or bringing him back too soon.
Right.
I want to go back to the idea of the future. So while, he was in that small percentile, like you said, of the Jones fracture not healing properly or within that span of time, so there is also probably a negative side to the bone graft procedure, right? A possibility. Right. Now, even though it's considered proactive and trying to be ahead of the curve and best for his long-term health. What have you learned about the possible drawbacks? What can go wrong here, or what can't go right, I guess is another way to put it.
Well, here's the thing with the bone graft, and from what I've been told from, I think Dr. Mark Addix was on SportsCenter recently, and he said the same thing, that there was 2 different studies done that show that bone graft procedures have been very successful in athletes, and that 100% of players that have undergone them have returned to play. So, I mean, it's never been the Jones fracture has never been a career-limiting or, career-destroying type of injury. I know a lot of people are trying to compare Durant to Bill Walton and Yao Ming, but this is a little different. And, obviously the downside to it is that you're having a third procedure on your foot. And to be in that 5 to 8% where the screw didn't agree with your body, I mean, that's concerning because you have to wonder now, does Durant have chronic foot problems? And, is this thing – because I don't know if you've ever seen Kevin Durant with his shoes off, but he's got some messed up looking feet. So
I haven't seen that. I've seen enough basketball players' feet to know, especially the way he plays and the way he's built, to know it can't possibly be pretty. All right, so that's a good sign then for those. And I think most people, at least those with like direct knowledge of the injury, are probably thinking more Brook Lopez, Pau Gasol, which are more on the positive side. Brook had an issue over and over again, but seems to be fine now. So again, obviously, like you said, not career threatening. And Pau Gasol, it was short term, it healed fine. All right, so I just want to go back quickly because I mentioned this on my radio show yesterday, and this was not an indictment of the Thunder. It was not even a question of whether the Thunder did the wrong thing. My question is it given after the initial injury, right, the initial healing process, he was out for 6 weeks, which normally is the right amount of time. Given, obviously, the position the team was in, it was already desperation time in terms of making the playoffs and trying to recover and everything else. Would they have been overly cautious, meaning because it's such a difficult fracture to heal, because the blood supply to that particular part of the foot is so limited, would they have been, in your opinion, overly cautious, maybe giving him 8 weeks, maybe even giving him another couple weeks after that to fully heal this problematic fracture if it wasn't that desperate a portion of the season, do you think?
That's a great question. I think it's a completely fair question to ask about, especially in hindsight with the way that this thing has gone. Is that, if you give Durant 2 or 3 more weeks, does that promote better healing? Does that mean that the screw agrees better? And, obviously we don't know that answer. But at the same time, the Thunder have historically been exceptionally cautious when it comes to player health. I know they took a lot of criticism last year with Russell Westbrook's knee, that he had basically 3 knee surgeries in a 9-month span. 2 of them were knee scopes. But that was because they were being ultimately cautious with Westbrook's knee. He was experiencing some pain and swelling in the knee, and so they didn't want to take any chances. They didn't want to let him play on it and then just reevaluate it in the offseason like a lot of teams would do. They wanted to be proactive, and obviously that's worked out. As we can see with Russell Westbrook, he looks to be just fine. So, the Thunder's history is that they're going to be really cautious with this stuff, Izzy. But, with the way that it's happened, I can't help but wonder the same thing, that, had they been in a different position, had they been firmly in the playoff race, if they hadn't started out the season 3-12, maybe they would have said, let's hold him out until, Christmas Day or something and bring him back. Give him a couple extra weeks to let this thing heal up. I think that part of what might have gone into their mindset is that Durant's Jones fracture wasn't kind of your standard Jones fracture, that they actually caught it before the bone broke. It was really just a stress thing that he kind of discovered himself in training camp and said my foot was hurting. So I wonder if that they felt like since they got out in front of it that it wasn't as severe, like it wasn't an actual break of the bone that happened from an incident. But they thought maybe this thing is going to heal a little bit better because of that. I don't know. But then again, I'm just speculating like crazy.
Yeah, no, and so was I. And again, this is not to me to suggest that they have any sort of reputation of doing that such a thing. In fact, as you mentioned, it's the exact opposite. It would seem, they as has been reported lately about their media policy, it seems like they want nothing more than for these players to be happy and to know that they have their back. So I'm not suggesting anything of the sort. Just saying, desperate times sometimes.
Right. No, I think it's a fair question.
Yeah. All right, so let's move to the future then, because this is another, in that same vein, I think obviously you give Kevin Durant as much time as possible to heal from this, even if it takes him into the season, even if it takes it into November, hypothetically, to where he feels like he's in good basketball shape. In that respect, I don't see how possibly this could affect his free agent situation. I want you to hear this sound. You might have heard it already in terms of it comes from Mark Stein on the NBA Insider program, or our NBA Insider on SportsCenter, excuse me. And this was his thoughts on how this should impact Durant going forward.
The minute this season ends, really, for the Thunder, most likely in early May, all the focus then does shift to Kevin Durant's future, and we know that the whole league is going to want him, and I assure you that the whole league still wants him, even though he's going to have the surgery and prove that he can come back. I mean, there's no indication that he isn't going to be able to rally from this, and the expectation around the league is that he will rally from this, that after this surgery, I think teams will still be lining up to take their chance on him if they can get him away from Oklahoma City, and naturally the Thunder are still going to do everything they can to keep him.
So that kind of falls in line with my eternal optimist or thinking in terms of, listen, not only is he going to come back and be back to being Kevin Durant and not have further foot problems, but I believe it'll probably benefit the Thunder in terms of the way they've approached this, the way they've taken care of him, and the way, frankly, they've been able to hang in there without him and look like a playoff team. So how do you see this, if at all, affecting the 2016 free agency for Kevin Durant? And on top of that, frankly, even next year, because I think it obviously puts a sense of urgency on next year, but maybe not to the level where everybody thinks, oh, if they don't win a championship, then Durant's definitely out.
Right. And here's kind of the glass half full look that I would give, is that in a way, obviously this is what the Thunder's mindset was in making the decision to shut Durant down and to do this surgery. But in a way, this is kind of a positive recruiting tactic that Sam Presti can employ, because here's the message he's giving Kevin Durant. Before the season started, everybody knew it. You potentially have 2 shots left with Kevin Durant before he leaves you. And the Thunder were just completely willing. They had a chance with the way that they've been playing, with the deal that they made, getting Enes Kanter, with the way Westbrook has been playing. Everybody felt like if they could get Durant back, they're going to get Ibaka back most likely for the playoffs. If they could just get healthy, they could give the Warriors a run for their money. And at that point, they could become a real, true contender for the NBA title, even as an 8th seed. So everybody knew this, and everybody understood that if they got Durant back, they could be a threat. But Presti was willing to shut him down anyway. And, I think that, and Durant knows that the pressure that the Thunder have to feel with just, basically eliminating one of their 2 chances that they could potentially have left with him before 2016. And to me, that's a strong message to the guy that Presti's telling Durant, look, we care about your long-term health and your long-term career, that we're willing to throw one of these chances away to ensure that you have a happy, healthy career. And, I think that that's an optimistic viewpoint, but, there's no question in my mind that Durant is going to realize that and understand that. And, a lot of the skeptic could say that, well, Durant may look at this as the Thunder completely mismanaged his health and put him in this position for 3 surgeries, but this wasn't the Thunder doctors performing this. This was all collaboration with Durant's representation, with the Thunder, with medical specialists. I mean, this isn't like the Thunder were just completely messing this up. Right. This was, Durant was as equally involved in this as anybody else. So if he wants to get mad, he's got to get mad at his own representation and the specialist that did it. So, I think as you look ahead to 2016, like you said, Izzy, I think this could be, in a weird way, kind of a positive towards keeping Durant in Oklahoma City. Yeah,
I'm kind of on that page too. All right, well, just to wrap up and go back to this year, Russell Westbrook hasn't had a triple-double since March 20th. We're almost in April. What's wrong with him?
I know. What's wrong with him? Is he even trying? I mean, he only had 33, 9, and 7 last night. Like,
lazy.
That's no good, right? Come on, man.
Right. No, in all seriousness, though. So it looks I'm going to, I think in the podcast you sort of promote honesty and encourage honesty. So I'm going to say full disclosure. When they were down, they were down 20 last night, right?
Yeah.
When they were down 20 to get the Suns, I kind of fell asleep. I woke up to the story that they won this game. It seems like they, even without Serge, without Kevin, they have a good handle on what they're doing. It obviously all revolves around Westbrook, but how do you see this team as a playoff threat? Because I'm going to go ahead and guess you're going to assume that they are going to take that 8th seed.
Yeah, I think that they will. Obviously, the Pelicans are the threat now. I think that they virtually eliminated the Suns last night because now the Thunder have the tiebreaker with them. They're 4 games up. The Suns have a really tough schedule coming up. So, I mean, I think the Suns are out of the picture. I think it's Thunder and Pelicans. And Thunder 2.5 up on New Orleans. I think that with the way the Thunder are playing, they kind of revealed the blueprint, I think, to how that they're going to have to win in a lot of these ways. And it's really going to just hinge completely around Westbrook and the decisions that he makes. Last night they're down 20, like you said, Izzy, that put you to sleep. And, what happened was Russell Westbrook scored 15 straight to get him back to within 8 going into halftime. And at that point, they kind of settled into the game. They made some adjustments. I thought Scott Brooks made some great choices last night in lineups. Kind of had to mess around to find a small ball lineup that could fit against the Suns. They started getting stops, and then, Westbrook was able to kind of pull back. Westbrook had 19 shot attempts at halftime. And everybody, I was kind of looking at this like, man, this dude may shoot 45 times tonight. But he pulled back and he started making some choices to kind of distribute, set up teammates. And that's when DJ Augustine clicked over. That's when Anthony Morrow played big. Steven Adams was huge. So that was when for the role guys were able to step up. And I think that was kind of a blueprint plan for the Thunder. Let Westbrook take you where he can, whether that's scoring, whether that's assisting, and then you just got to hope and pray that everybody else steps up behind him. Now, if they get into a series with the Warriors, I don't think they're beating the Warriors. I think everybody is going to agree on that. But I do think the Thunder could win a game or two. I think that they're a threat because I think Russell Westbrook is that good.
You said a word, I don't know if it's a word or a hyphenated word or 2 words, but something that always intrigues me when it comes to Oklahoma City Thunder, and that's small ball. It seems like Scotty's down to an 8-man rotation, right, with Mitch McGarry playing a little bit. But, his starters include essentially 2 centers in Cantor and Adams. I think they play some of their best basketball with 1 big and go small. And if you're talking about matching up with the Warriors, of course, you're probably looking at a lot of Draymond Green at the 4, and so they're essentially going small. How do you see that? Do you see that as probably their best option, especially when you look at a playoff matchup? And how willing do you think Scotty Brooks is to go there?
Yeah, that's a great question because, in the past, the Thunder have played a decent amount of small ball because they had one of the 2 best small ball players in the world, Kevin Durant. You throw Durant as your stretch 4, and you're able to switch everything. You can match up. You're versatile on both ends of the floor. You can create mismatches on offense, match up on defense. And the Thunder don't really have that option right now without Durant. They've been kind of scrambling to find it. At times, right now, the one player they're missing a lot, honestly, is Nick Collison. He's out with an ankle sprain, and he's kind of, in a backwards way, kind of tried to be that stretch 4 guy because he's a little bit more versatile. He can space out to the 3-point line. He's improved that shot this year. But they're trying to play that kind of twin tower look with Cantor and Adams. And while some teams that they can dominate the glass and they can match up, other games like last night, that's just not working. And, I think that what you give when you go small, they basically played Kyle Singler, power forward, for most of the second half last night. You give Russell Westbrook 3 shooters to find. You got Augustine out there with him. You got Morrow, who's one of the best shooters in the league. You got Singler, who can knock down an open 3. And then you got Adams kind of to kind of anchor the defense on the inside. And I thought that lineup worked really well. So, to me, that's something that they got to look at going forward. Now, it might change when they get Serge Ibaka back, or if they get Serge Ibaka back, they might have to readjust it because they're going to want him on the floor with either Adams or Cantor. But this is going to be on Scott Brooks. A lot of people are critical of his coaching ability, but this is where maybe he can flex his chops a little bit to get creative and find some lineups that work.
Flexing chops for Scotty Brooks. I want to see that happen. Royce, I know you're in an airport, so I was going to ask you about Russell Westbrook in 2017, but you're already stressed out, so I don't want to make it any worse. Thanks for joining me, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the insight.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Izzy.
All right, once again, thanks to Royce Young of ESPN.com talking Oklahoma City. And coming up, True Hoops' Kevin Arnovitz makes his NBA Lockdown podcast debut. We'll see if he can hang. He's coming up next.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
All right, and joining me now to talk some more Western Conference, maybe a little OKC in there as well, is Kevin Arnovitz of True Hoop of ESPN.com. You can find him, I'm sure, all over the internets. Kevin, how you doing?
I am doing very well.
Well, Kevin, you're new to the podcast, so you probably aren't aware that "oh snap, news has broken" sound probably means we're being joined by someone new. So, Josh, break the news, will you?
We have Amin Elhassan on the line.
Oh, I'm shocked. I'm shocked. Amin, can't stay away from the podcast.
Hey,
what's going on, Amin?
I'm sitting here by the pool in LA Live. I got my sunglasses on. I got a pineapple that's cut in half with an umbrella in it, and I was saying, you know what? I wonder what they're talking about, right? I picked up my phone and decided to dial in.
Well, Amin gets a demerit for bragging unnecessarily. All right, guys, so apparently the Warriors are just going to remain hot all year long. They're not even going to take a break from being the best team in the league, even when they rest guys. We've also got the Rockets here taking over second place in the Western Conference, and, of course, the Spurs, who are, on a Warriors type of tear. They've won, 13 of 16, looking really good right now. I want to start with the Rockets then. They're just getting Dwight Howard back, and they don't know the extent yet of Patrick Beverley's injury, whether he's going to be out for essentially the year or if it's just a couple of weeks maybe, to see how his wrist can heal. Kevin, I'll start with you. The Rockets. Daryl Morey. Actually, you know what? Here, let's play this sound, and you can respond to this. This is Daryl Morey on the NBA Lockdown Insider show yesterday.
We think we can win the title with or without Beverley. Obviously, it gets more challenging without Beverley. He's the key to our ability to guard a lot of these very good point guards in the West. But we feel like with a full-strength Dwight Howard, it looks like we may have that. Full-strength James Harden, which we've had all season. Looks like we're going to get Terrence Jones and Donatas Motiejunas back in time for the playoffs with hopefully a few games to get those guys tuned up. And, we feel very good. We won't go in as the favorite. I think Golden State, deservedly so, gets to be called the favorite.
Kevin, your thoughts on whether the Rockets can be a legit title contender?
I called them scary back in November. Obviously that was before they acquired Smith. That was before Howard went out. I like them a lot less without Beverley just because everyone's like, wow, how do they have this fifth-ranked or third-ranked defense? Howard wasn't in, and the answer is ball pressure. And Beverly's is, I think, really essential to what they do. That said, they played really well defensively yesterday. Granted, Washington can't get a good shot to save its life. But
you can't hold that. You can't credit them for that one because Washington's offense is a mess.
But no, yet all of us picked them to win the Southeast Division. I like them a little less without Beverly, but I don't know. There's a cohesiveness there. This is a coherent basketball team that finds great shots. It's still, again, with Terry at the other guard position defensively, I worry against a Golden State or even a Memphis for that matter. But I still like them a lot. And again, I feel somewhat exonerated just because, again, I called them scary back in November and then kind of sunk into a hole for 3 months there.
Amin?
The Beverly thing is huge. I don't think people recognize what kind of impact he has on the team. And they're going to try and make do. Last night, Nick Johnson got minutes. And he's probably, of all the guys on the roster, he's probably the most closely approximate what Beverly does on the court. But he is a rookie. So that might be asking a lot. But, Kevin, I asked this of Daryl Morey last night, and he kind of gave me a real political answer, I guess. Biggest difference defensively from last year to this year. For them to not have Howard for as long as they haven't had him. Is it purely personnel driven, or is there another answer to this? Why they can jump from a middle of the pack defense last year to an elite defense this year?
One is, look, I haven't seen Ariza hit a 3-point shot all year. I know that he's supposedly hitting in the low 30s. I swear I have not seen one of them. But all of a sudden, it's much easier to hide Harden between Beverly and Ariza. When you have a 2 that can be hidden between a 1 and a 3. And then on top of that, Harden, frankly, he needs a little less hiding. He's gone from being truly awful to, acceptable. And so, so now you have, now you have a wing who's just, Ariza's really smart defensively. offensively, I don't think it's all there, but like, you know, when you just kind of bookend Harden between those two guys, now all of a sudden your perimeter's kind of taken care of. You know, Dorsey's a big guy. He's just a big dude. And again, I don't think it approximates Howard, but, you know, it's sort of like that Indiana thing where, well, you're dealing with Hill and George, you know, you're doing all this length on the perimeter, and Stevenson last season, and so you could actually have a reasonable conversation saying, yeah, Hibbert's important, but he's not that important. And I just think when the perimeter's locked down like that, you know, then you can kind of shrink the floor, and it's interesting to watch. I mean, they're not a true pressure, you know, flood the strong side defense, but it's hard to get space on the floor against them. I mean, what are you seeing?
I'm seeing what you just said, that they're throwing lineups out there with enough guys who can defend and disrupt the passing lanes. I mean, they've been excellent at pressuring the passing lanes and forcing turnovers. And, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, he's so improved defensively. And I'm like, okay, so he went from, you know, horrendous to, you know, just simply mediocre, which is, I guess, is a huge improvement. But, yeah, the big thing there is they run a lot of small ball lineups. And I think that allows them to do a better job of disrupting. They're a lot more agile. They're able to switch on a lot more pick and rolls. And all of this helps. Anytime they can switch James Harden off, they're avoiding getting him in situations where he's getting isolated against an offensive threat.
Also, don't you love how they're using Smith defensively? I mean, I think you talk about that versatility, and I love seeing them defensively on the floor when Josh Smith is out there. I mean, I don't know that he's any more judicious offensively, and he's still firing up crazy shots and whatever, but like he really works for them defensively.
He's their center. That's the funniest thing. He's been playing center for him, and no one's really talking about that. That, you know, the whole point about Josh Smith being a liability out there is because of his offensive shortcomings. Well, how do you take care of making him a much better shooter overnight? You just make him play the position that has the least need for shooting from the perimeter, and he plays the 5 for him.
I think it's more of to answer your question to me, I think it's mostly personnel driven, isn't it? Because you're talking about without Chandler Parsons, no Jeremy Lin, and now you're talking about adding Trevor Ariza, you're more of Patrick Beverly, I guess, and like you mentioned, a Josh Smith in there. I think it's largely personnel driven, and the idea that, you know, you throw in the fact that last year that if this was their top priority to improve defensively, it's not just all on James Harden. Right. You've got different personalities there that say, okay, you want the defensive switch turned on? I got that. I can do that every night. And maybe, you know, you can make excuses for Trevor Ariza all you want. You know, he's not in a contract year, so that's where people point to. But it could just be that his shooting's down because his effort on the defense is up. And you never really know how that can affect them because obviously they're encouraged to shoot threes. It's not like he's out of rhythm in that respect.
Well, the thing that Daryl Morey pointed to was that they basically turned over the defensive game planning responsibilities to J.B. Bickerstaff. And they didn't go out and replace Calvin Sampson with a new person. They basically said, JB, this is going to be your role now. And, you know, he's done that. But, you know, one guy that we haven't mentioned is Corey Brewer.
Yeah.
And Corey Brewer is a weird dude. He's not an elite defender. He's actually kind of like average to above average. But he plays with such an infectious energy that I think he makes their defense better. He's all over the court, and he kind of, it's one of those things where we've seen it a bunch of times throughout the years with guys who are effort players can raise the effort level of everybody else on the court simply by making effort plays. And I think Corey Brewer's been doing that for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, the guy's just a bundle of energy. You just got to look at him, and you and he'll look at you back, and you think, oh wow, I feel more energetic. This guy's this guy's amazing that way. But are there any concerns with the offensive end, Kev? Because you're talking about a team that's lower third in the league in terms of shooting percentage, and right around middle of the pack in terms of offensive efficiency, a little higher, maybe 13th. Isn't really. I consider that middle of the pack, right? Any concern that they won't be able to keep up with, the Spurs or the Warriors in that respect in the playoffs?
I don't worry about overall field goal percentage just because obviously they subscribe to the theory that, you're going to look at effective field goal percentage. they're happy to make 38% of their threes on a given night, right? Like that's a huge success. I think their offense is still really provisional. I think it's partially a function of the fact that nobody has been on the floor together ever. Like it's just, I haven't looked at the kind of lineup data, but I can't imagine there are any really high usage lineups. So, it's kind of what you alluded to, right? Like Ariza is encouraged to shoot three. Well, 3 of those attempts a game are going to be contested. They're going to be lousy, but you're sort of empowered to do it on the grounds that, look, even if you hit those contested threes at a 30% clip, like you're not doing bad. I mean, there's an entire, I think, offensive outlook there that's employed that doesn't always necessarily encourage what would be conventionally thought of as a good shot. I think getting Howard back in is going to be really interesting. Obviously, I think we all kind of collectively decided, like, yeah, he's this defensive force offensively. Well, he can take up space. He can set that screen. He's not crazy about rolling to the basket. He gets a little bit tired. You can kind of see his eyes roll when he has to do it too many consecutive times. But, like, I think he's actually going to help. I think integrating him back in the lineup is actually really going to help. I'd like to think that we're going to still start seeing that Orlando Magic, Van Gundy, 09 era offense that, honestly, when he was there was top 5 in the league consistently in terms of efficiency. So I have aspirations that they're going to be a lot better than this 13th ranked team, which is kind of why they're my new mystery guest in the West. I mean, we'll talk later. I don't think anyone touches Golden State, and I think this conversation about it being wide open is sort of ridiculous. But I have higher aspirations for them offensively in the playoffs.
The mystery guest, I love that. There's a little bell that rung. Yes,
you know what? I was going to ask you about James Harden and the MVP thing, but you mentioned I'd rather go to Golden State here because I was thinking about this all weekend long. I don't know why, but I was. And I have a feeling we're going to go through this postseason, and it's all going to be fun and entertaining, and I'm sure we'll get some moments from an Eastern Conference team perhaps. But I think what kind of signs are we looking for, whether it be health? I mean, health is obviously a factor. You just have to assume health throughout the postseason, but in terms of offense, in terms of defense, in terms of consistency, in terms of doing it, sustaining it for an entire season, I have a feeling we're going to go through the season, the Warriors are going to win the championship, and we're all going to say, why wasn't that a lot more obvious? Because it seems right now, like based on however many games, 70, 72 games, that there shouldn't be anybody close to them. And I think, Kev, I'll let you start there because you seem to imply that already.
I mean, look, I always think that the great thing about the playoffs is we don't have to have these hypothetical arguments like we will see it played out. But, like, the fact that this is like, ooh, it's wide open, it's ridiculous. I mean, I think the Clippers passed them by a nano point yesterday, but basically we're talking about the top offense in the league, the top defense in the league, the top transition defense in the league, the top transition offense in the league. You want to go small? Fine. You want to throw a switching scheme defensively? Fine. You want to play more traditionally with Bogut as the rim protector and kind of the creeper on the strong side? Fine. Like, they can do whatever they want. They're like super, like, Wonder Twins activate, like, we'll be whatever we want to be. We'll go small. We'll go enormous. Like, we'll go 4 out. We'll go 5 out. Like, it doesn't. That's the beautiful thing about them. They're so ridiculously versatile. There is no statistical defense for their not being the favorite. Like, if they were wearing any other jersey, if there was this notion that, they had some incumbency where they've been to a conference final and taken their lumps. We love this narrative in the NBA. Well, the Celtics had to, the Pistons had to get past the Celtics, and the Bulls had to get past the Pistons, and you have to sort of take your lumps and suffer heartbreak before you can actually see the promised land, which I just don't really subscribe to because they're so much better than everybody else, and that's not, like, subjective.
Man, I'm with you here, Kev. Ethan Strauss likes to say this all the time. When it's all said and done, when he talks about the VP race, so we're going to look back and say, well, how is that even close? How did people ever say, this thing, anyone could win. It's anybody's game. It's wide open. The stat I keep going back to is 7 teams in NBA history have outscored their opponents by 10-plus points per game in the regular season. 6 of them won the championship. So this isn't their team. Every year there's that one team that's doing a lot better than everyone thought they would. What they're doing is pretty special. But for the interest of making this thing interesting,
I was going to ask you because I know you're talking about the Spurs here.
Yes. Who would you take? I open this up to both of you guys. Spurs and Warriors Is it going to be as close as everyone thinks it is because by virtue of these guys being the Spurs and they just don't go away?
Is you want it? Your show.
No, you go first. I've talked to Amin about this before, so I'll chime in after you.
Hey, look, it's hard to assess whether or not is it going to be close, semi-close, kind of close, close at times. I mean, I have the Warriors, and just that's absolutely no critique on the Spurs other than to say that every few years there is a team that emerges that is just, I mean, whether you want to call it lightning in a bottle, and maybe they won't be back this way next season, but everything they're doing works. Again, and they can, what I like about them, it's not like, oh, they play this very specific way and they can eke out 65 wins because, you know, most nights they're better than most of the league. Like, what's amazing to me is how many different ways they kill you. And they, as you said, they kill teams. And what's their average win margin at home? Someone said like 50. It's ridiculous, right? But, you know, I love the Spurs right now. And in fact, it's great to see. I think basketball is better when the Spurs are playing like they have at their best moments the past 2-3 seasons. But as much as I like the Spurs, I just think the Warriors are that good. I have them. Whether it be 4-3 and everybody holds serve, or it's 4-2 and the Spurs play respectably because they always do, I have no idea. But I like the Warriors over everybody, and I know that doesn't make for interesting conversation. I can supposedly come up with a hypothetical that says, yeah, Houston goes 48% from 3 for 6 games, and all of a sudden, you know, they shock the world. But by and large, I just have the Warriors against everybody.
Yeah, and look, I'm with you there, too. In terms of the Spurs, and I know, I mean, you and I have talked about this, the idea of throwing Danny Green onto Klay Thompson and Kawhi Leonard on Steph Curry and seeing if that disrupts them in terms of their ability to come off screens, find clean shots or what have you. I just don't see it. Like, there's something about – I don't know if it's Steph in particular, it's the way they run their stuff, or the fact that they need a sliver of room to get what we can all call a good shot off for them because we've seen enough already, that it's different than when you're defending a classic, you know, 2-man, 1-2 scoring punch. I mean, it's entirely different. Like, if I'm Kawhi Leonard, I would feel better about defending LeBron James because he's done it and done it at a high level than I would feel about trying to continue to chase Steph Curry around because, again, he's looking for anything. He's looking for any amount of room, and he can get it off. And he's so much better with the ball and what he can do around screens or what have you. Kawhi's not going to be able to stick with him. Danny Green's not going to be able to stick with him. I don't think that those two, as good a defenders as they are going to affect the Warriors that significantly. It might get them for a game. It might throw them off. But I don't see it really affecting their offense that much.
But here's the thing. Like, okay, so they do. Let's say Steph goes 6 for 18. The Warriors' defense is still better than yours. I mean, that's the thing. So you lock them down for a couple of games. So Curry shoots 39% for the series. Like, they still have the best defense in the league. I mean, even if you want to slog it out at 89 to 84, fine. Like, chances are you're the 84 because their defense is that good.
And you're looking at, like, if you want to talk about Kawhi Leonard and his emergence, and he's been playing great lately, I mean, they got Draymond Green on that end that they'll throw on him, and he could be the defensive player of the year. Again, not saying that he's going to shut down Kawhi, but there are opposite sides to this. That like you mentioned, Kev, that Warriors defense is good for a reason. It's not just because they're blowing teams out and teams are giving up.
Every Warriors game I watch, they'll always have this stretch, usually it's in the third quarter, where it's like they all look at each other, all right, playtime's over. And they don't let you run your stuff. I'm not saying that, they guarded and they rotated and they contested the shot. I'm saying they don't let you run your stuff. We want to run a pick and roll on the left side and then have a guy coming off a flare screen. No, you're not. They won't let you get to the pick, or they won't let the other guy come off the flare screen, or they won't let the big roll. They literally lock everything down like a prison. Like, everyone back in their cells, 3-hour lockdown. And that is the most frightening thing about it. Pretty close to Alcatraz.
They are close to Alcatraz. That makes sense.
I mean, that's probably a pretty good nickname that you just coined there, Izzy.
I mean, here's the interesting thing, and I mean, you tell me, as a guy who's been in development, like, if this goes how I think a lot of us think it goes, and I don't know if it's going to be faux, but, like, the Warriors march to a title. Are we going to see teams basically say, you know what, we want to design a roster where most of our guys are between 6'4" and 6'9"? where, and again, it's derivative a little bit of Phoenix and other places, right? Where we just say the best defense is a versatile defense. Like the best defense, rim protector, and it's great to have Roy Hibbert if you have that guy or some hulking presence at the rim. But by and large, versatility is the premium product you want in your defense. And I just think that like we might be in a situation where if the Warriors are as good as we think they are and they perform as well as we think they might, that they kind of influence the game a la like the 05-07 era Suns to a really profound effect.
You know what the interesting thing here, Kevin, is, yes, first of all, teams will try, but the reason why they won't be successful is because the Warriors don't just have a bunch of 6'4" or really a bunch of 6'6" dudes, because the only guy who's short there is Curry and Leandro Barbosa. For all those other guys are 6'6" and taller. That's not the defining characteristic to me of their roster. The defining characteristic is those guys are all absurdly high IQ players. Iguodala, Livingston, Bogut, Draymond Green, Curry. These guys are all really, really high-level thinkers. And when you have that many guys, you can do the type of things. Here's the reason why people don't do switching defenses in the NBA. Because all too often, guys will mess it up. Remember what happened with the Knicks with Mike Woodson. They used to switch everything, and basically it was the laziest defense ever. And they got
right. It's not much. My guard can't guard that guy in the post. It's, you know what, functionally this isn't going to work unless everybody's really quick to react and intuitive about it.
Exactly. You're right. People are going to try to duplicate it, and they'll fail. And that's why we build defenses around a defensive anchor, around a dominant big, because quite frankly, it's easier to find one of those dudes, and those dudes are rare. I'm not saying they're on every block. Those dudes are rare, and that's why they get paid. It's easier to find one of those dudes than it is to find 6 dudes like the Warriors got.
Well, let me ask you this then. Do we become kind of a Wonderlic league? Do we become this league, and I don't watch a lot of college basketball because it's unwatchable, and it puts me into a state of unconsciousness. I mean, it's just terrible. But it's hard for me to appraise the prospects coming in, and I'll take a look in Synergy at a certain point, or dread watching this film and do it anyway. But do we get to a point where we're a Wonderlic league, where it's the kind of, and the Spurs already are, right? Like they identified Kawhi Leonard early as that kind of player, right?
Right.
But do we get to a point where smarts is the new raw athleticism, where, you worry about the structure of your team and your personnel first, which is like, we run this kind of the way Atlanta and San Antonio, which is like, look, talent is talent, but we want a certain kind of guy. Do we become a certain kind of guy league above all athletic prowess?
Athletic prowess is always going to have a certain allure because it's there, right? You can see it. You can't see smarts. It's very subtle, and a lot of times if you don't know what you're looking for, you're going to miss it. And I don't mean that to be a commentary about player evaluation around the league, but a lot of on that stuff, or they just discount it. They think, okay, that was a smart play, but that guy just jumped over a car, So, but I do think it's already there. We already are a Wonderlic league. I know it, and for me, I think it happened when the rules changes happened. Changes meant that we're not going to do, the one-on-one defenses. We're not going to do. First of all, you can't touch guys with your hands. But the other thing is, you can play these hybrid zone-type defenses. Basically, we upgraded, actually ramped up the decision-making for players on the defensive end. It used to be, that's my man, guard my man. And there's no such thing as guard my man right now. It helps that you can guard your man, but in many ways, I'd rather have a guy who's a good team defender and a so-so one-on-one defender than the opposite. Guy who's
which explains Atlanta, right? I mean,
yep.
That's not a team other than Damari, and even Damari. I don't think that's a team with a lot of gifted individual defenders, right?
Yep, absolutely. So, I think, I know in Phoenix, a guy like Jared Dudley. If there are 450 players in the NBA, Jared Dudley ranks 451 in athleticism. But he's literally the living incarnation of mind over body. He's smart enough where this 6'7", pudgy guy who's not quick and waddles when he runs. He can be not only a rotation player, he can be a starting player in the NBA and not look out of place because he's so smart. He knows where to be at the right time. He gambles smart gambles. He's got active hands. He's communicating with his teammates. Those guys are out there. And that's why, the 3-and-D player, while we like to think of him as just kind of this guy who I shut down people and then I shoot threes, really it's a little bit more than that. I'm a guy who can switch. I'm a guy who communicates with my players, with my teammates, and I'm a guy who is active and mobile within the half-court defense.
Can you teach it, think about Mo Spates? Because he's kind of doing it. Like, Mo, as one coach once said to me, not the most linear thinker, but, he is now, right?
I think
it's not.
No, he's not. Kev, I think you have to have enough people around to make up for the one or two people that maybe aren't the highest basketball IQ, and then all of a sudden they look like they are because they're just sort of fitting in and doing what everybody else is doing. I think the basketball IQ thing for the Wonderlic League, like you mentioned, I just remember when LeBron James came into the league, and it was sort of the basketball. You heard about basketball IQ more possibly than you ever have before, but I think. The idea being, okay, well, your star has to be really smart so he can make everybody else better. Well, everybody else being really smart basketball-wise can make your star better, and it can make, Steph Curry into an MVP or Klay Thompson into, an all-star because around you they're equally as smart. So I think that's where maybe that next level where the Warriors are showing off, especially on the defensive end, like you mentioned, in terms of just smarts being more important than athleticism.
God, this is the smartest podcast we've ever done. This is a really intelligent conversation. I just want to pat ourselves on the back.
Which means nobody's going to listen to it, guys.
Well, I want to end with comedy then, because I want you to listen to this. This is not the Western Conference whatsoever. It's Kevin Love, who left with a back injury, who, by the way, insisted he didn't have a back injury all season long, which, not probably true. And just check out this exchange with a reporter yesterday after he left the game after being hit in the back and saying he probably needs a couple days off.
Coach was saying you took an elbow. Is that what it was that set it off?
Yeah, that's what happened, and just have to take these next couple of days. So we're kind of fortunate with my Shump and myself that we have those couple of days.
How does it feel right now?
Good. We got some treatment on it. Feels good.
Yeah, I need a couple days, but it feels good. It feels good. I don't understand what's going on with Kevin Love. I don't understand what kind of teammate he is, whether people like him or not. But just to wrap this up, give me your best guess here in terms of how you think he's received in that locker room, because he's just, I don't know, I've always liked the guy. I've always wanted, I've talked to him. I've done an in-depth story on him, I thought, and he was really likable. I don't know if just the pressure of being in Cleveland sort of changes him or the experience has changed him, but he just doesn't seem the same to me.
I mean, not to be completely cynical, tell me how they're going to do. If they win, he's a little bit of a lone wolf, kind of, moody, a little bit of a smart ass. That's fine. If they lose, he's an absolute albatross, and what did LeBron say? Fit out, fit in, or whatever the little thing was. I mean, the answer to who is Kevin Love is tell me how they're going to do this spring. And that's always the case, right? He's a misanthrope if they lose, and he's, a guy who kind of marches to his own drum beat if they win, and it's okay.
But how about this scenario then? What if they do win, and he says, all right, I won, I want to go back to being the other guy? I don't know if, the winning cures all adage, does it apply here? I guess we don't know, right? We were not going to, because I think his misery, presumed misery in his role in Cleveland probably feels or outweighs or overpowers the winning, because there was a moment in the middle of the season, February-ish, where he looked like he was bought all in. He was cheering on passes. He didn't care where his shots were coming from, but that turned again, and it's seemingly. And so I just don't know if winning's going to cure all for him. I mean,
you know who he is? I'm going to have to blow your guys' minds right now.
Uh-oh. All right.
He's Glenn Rice, circa 2000. Glenn Rice on the Lakers. Remember? He came and was the all-star MVP. He was one of the great perimeter scorers. He's the missing link. He came. He wasn't quite Glenn Rice, but he hit some big shots. They win a championship. He's a free agent. Adios.
You think he's gone?
Man, this is what I know about players. People always say, oh, players want to live in Miami and they want to go to hot places. Yeah, but that's on the list, but it's really low. The number one thing on the list is obviously money. I want to get paid. Number 1A probably is I want to play my strengths. Like, I want to be a winner, but I'm doing it my way. And Kevin Love might win this year, and Kevin Love may be offered a lot of money, but I don't get the feeling he feels fulfilled. I don't get the feeling that he feels like, yeah, this is who I am as a player. And Bosch was talking about at the beginning of the year, is that you're a great player, but you're not going to look like it. And you're going to have to hear every day for however many years you play in this system or with these teammates about how you're overrated, you're overpaid, I can't believe people thought that you were good, and strong enough to take that ego hit daily and say, yes, sir, can I have another? And Chris Bosh was, because he went 4 years of it and never complained didn't really rock the boat or pout or sulk. He just said, I'm doing what is asked of me and with this team. Kevin Love, that kind of guy, I don't know, because I don't think he has accomplished as much as Bosh did prior to joining this super team scenario.
I think, we can leave the hypotheticals and the predictions, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see how he's viewed if he does leave. Whether he'll forever be considered a stats guy and me first, and whether people don't think he's a good teammate, or whether they just think, hey, it's human nature. First of all, I don't think they're going to win it this year, so therefore, he can leave and say, well, it didn't really work out, and now I'm going to go find another place where it will. So I just think that's going to be really interesting to see how that happens. But we're going to wrap this bad boy up. Thank you to Royce Young. Thanks to Kevin Arnovitz and Amin Elhassan for dropping in, because he can't stay away. He can't quit the podcast, and we love that. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again on Wednesday.
Thanks for listening to NBA Lockdown on ESPN Radio. For more great podcasts, check out the Pod Center page on ESPNradio.com.